So Blair, you got the audio turned on? Okay. We're going to get started in just a minute. So just bear with us for trying to get the live stream going. So just for tonight, for those of you that are present, this is the public hearing for the Kane County reapportionment redistricting map, as was presented on November 9th for the county board by Madam Chair Corinne Pirog. So we're going to be presenting that. We're going to be talking about the map and the process. I know Madam Chairman's going to have a few words to say. We're glad you're here. As soon as we get the audio and everything going for the stream, we'll be ready to start. But the live stream, it is being recorded, so it'll be rebroadcast on countyofkane.org. If you want to watch it later, it'll be on our YouTube channel. If there's people at home watching it and want to provide a public comment, we have information out on the website, so you can submit public comments online through email. You didn't have to be here tonight. So with that, Blair, we got the audio going. Okay. So to open up, I'd like to introduce Madam Chairman Corinne Pirog. She's going to say a few remarks for our opening. Thank you.
Fine. All right. Hi, everybody. And for those people who may be watching online as well, excuse my voice. I have come down with a head cold. And for those of you who would like to use an additional mic, I have sanitizers to wipe it off. So I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to talk very long because I don't want to start coughing. So I may interject from time to time as we go through this process. We started this map drawing, and first I'd like to welcome you all. Thank you for coming out on a November night to be able to learn about something that's very important. We've heard a lot about congressional maps. We've heard a lot about state maps. But what oftentimes people don't pay attention to are our local maps. And politics, I'm sure you've heard the saying, politics is all local. Well, this is critically important because indeed, your Kane County representative for the Kane County Board is your feet on the ground, your person on the ground to know what's going on both with local money that we receive from the feds and from the state, as well as your property taxes, your forest preserve district, as well as an upswing to let people know from the state as well as the federal government what we need here in Kane County. So your representation and who you choose to represent you is important for your future. And this map is going to be for the next 10 years. Now, every 10 years when there's a census, and Zach Kautsky is going to talk more about this, we are required by federal law to do the reapportionment. Well, this year, the federal census, as you know, was delivered a lot later than we had anticipated. So we went through several versions of the map. The first map was done with American Community Survey data. And that came through and the board voted upon that and said that we could use that data. The board voted on how many members they would like to have. This year, they decided to keep it the same as they had previous year for 24 board members, which are reflected in this map. And for those of you viewing online, you can see a map and a responsive map too. You can do searching on it online at the Kane County website. So 24 members divided by a certain number. When we were using the ACS data, American Community Survey data, we thought that we were going to have a higher population. All fine, did many versions of the map, lots of conversation, but then lo and behold, the census data came in later on, and guess what? It's a different number altogether. We had actually lost population in the city of Aurora, that area. Matter of fact, that dropped by about 9%, which means the map that we originally did was no good. So we had to start from scratch again. And so here we are now with what I believe to be the final map. Now, there are going to be two maps that you may see, and I'd like to present both to you today. This one No, this is not the right one either. Okay, this is the most recent, but there was another map dated 11/8 that I presented to the board. And the biggest changes on that was evolving District 16. It was more compact, going closer to the eastern border. This version, which was done on 11/12, was presented to the task force as well as to the board for their review. Well, maps are dynamic at this point. They're not set in stone because the board has not done the final vote on it yet, and that'll happen on November 30th. So today, no, we presented it on Friday. Saturday, Sunday, there was conversation that occurred. So today, Monday morning, we met again with representatives of the Republican and Democratic Party. They had a discussion about how they would like to see the map finalized. There was some what we call tweaking done to the map, which presents to the map this map here on 11/15. So this is the map that I'm hoping the board is going to approve on November 30th. And this is the map that we're taking a look at getting public input about to see how you feel about the map. Now, the map can be making sure that you've got city boundaries like we did for Algonquin, making sure that there are units together, that you are not divided up too much in one district, to make it continuous, as they say, and to make sure, remember that population, that we are in between 21,000 and 22,000 people in all 24 of these districts. Some of the districts are highly populated, like that in Aurora, and some in Elgin, so there's tighter. Some of the others out west are bigger because they don't have as many people, a lot of farmland, a lot of rural area there. So of course their area is going to be much larger in geography than those closer to the eastern side of the county border. We have made altogether, this was, I can guarantee you, this map was not drawn behind closed doors. Absolutely not. Doors were wide open. They were so wide open that we had, where's my notes here? About 170 to 175 responses for changes and edits to the map over the course of drawing this. And we also drew altogether from the very beginning to this point, 19 full maps. So Roger's going to show you some of the revisions that were happening during the history of this. But right now, we may want to do 20 maps, and that depends upon the input from the community. To go further on, as I think it's time for my voice to start cracking a little bit, I think Zach will be next up to talk to you about the process and how we did all of this.
All right. Thanks, Madam Chair. My name is Zach Kautsky. I am one of two consultants that has been working with the county here starting back in the spring when it was warm. So the chair laid out a good kind of general aspect to how we approach this. Initially, it was with American Community Survey data, which historically had actually been pretty accurate. And then moving forward, the state law changed, which gave us more time to really wait for the 2020 census data to come through. And in doing so, we weren't having to rely on ACS data, which previous state statute and county ordinance would have required us to do because of the delay. Because that deadline then was pushed out, we were able to wait until late summer when that data came through. And again, to the chair's point, that's where we realized that there was a fairly significant difference in the two numbers. One had the county growing by about 20,000 or about 15,000 voters and residents, and then the other had a much smaller rate of growth of just over 1,000 on that. And the disproportionate number of where the difference between those two sets of data was surprisingly in the city of Aurora, and the portion of Kane within it, which makes up the bulk of Aurora, had that significant difference come through on it. What we also did, though, regardless of the data set that we were utilizing, was a couple different things. One, first and foremost, a preponderance of consideration for Voting Rights Act considerations. And for those, I know there's a couple folks in the audience that have heard this a bunch of times, but for those that that may be the first time that they're hearing it, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 requires us, demographers, elected officials, and staff to consider where populations of minority representation resides, and if a percentage of, in this case, primarily for Kane County, of Latino residents can be drawn into a district of around 65% or more, they must be able to do so. We must do so. And there's two numbers even within that 65 that are of consideration. You just have total population, every man, woman, and child. And then the lesser version of that population, which would be the voting age population. So VAP data you might hear referenced a couple times, which is the consideration for those eligible, not necessarily registered, but those eligible residents within that district, comprising a percentage, in our cases for the Latino districts, that stems from basically 62 to 63%, that would be able to exercise their will at the ballot box to elect a member of their community or of their choosing to represent them. That's not always going to be a guarantee that that member then is of the same community, but it would give that voting bloc an opportunity to elect a historically underrepresented member of that community to a legislative body to represent said community. So we looked at where within the county's division of now 24 districts, where we were able to draw districts that would comprise a compact and contiguous without massive deviation of, again, that 21 to 22,000 residents per district that would allow us to get to 65%. So we, regardless of data and version of map, we always started with that population first and foremost in consideration, because you kind of have to do that to then draw everything else. We always were able, with regards to consideration, draw 8 districts that are considered VRA compliant. And why would you want VRA compliance? Because if you don't, that opens you up to legal challenge from an interested party that would say you didn't take into consideration this federal law, and therefore you are denying minority representation opportunities. So we were always able to find 8 districts, primarily in the southeastern and northeastern part of the counties, and started out with those districts and then drew everything else. We also then always had to maintain deviation. Precedent allows for up to 5% in positive, meaning that you would have up to 5% more residents per district than your average, or you would be able to go 5% below. The will of the board was to stay much more narrow than that, ideally 1 to 2% on any given district within that on either side of the ledger there, negative or positive. Because again, the belief would be more people, more power. But when you've got a set number of districts that all have one representative, one board member in the same, the reality is one person, one vote, trying to maintain that population deviation as minimal as possible is the ideal and would be, again, subject to challenge if we went beyond that. So we always looked at population deviation, and then also considered, certainly through the input, there was 5 meetings prior to this throughout the county, but also board members themselves, historical considerations of what a district line looked like, of what other considerations, geographic boundaries, communities, their own boundaries should be considered not to be split. And most people, because this is a political, you get elected to this office, would say, well, precincts would be one of those. They typically are not. What we were talking about more were like municipal boundaries, local units of government boundaries, geographic ones, such as major roadways or waterways. Fox River, you'll notice some of those boundaries look fairly similar to the river's path here. And also considering exactly what the chair mentioned is the rural representation in the county. The county overwhelmingly is urbanized, but the western kind of third of it should have opportunity to elect themselves representative from that community of their choosing. So what we did was always maintain that for consideration as well. And you'll see that, I think, reflected here. The input then from the public was certainly considered and taken into consideration back to the individual board members and for the body as a whole. And through quite a bit of meetings, we continue to get input and tweaks where some folks were more, interested in maintaining a certain business district or again, maintaining a historical connection to communities within a singular district that had always been kept together over the last couple iterations of the map to do so again. But, at each point in the way, myself and the partner that I worked with on this, Josina Marita, had to really consider how did these requests affect the VRA consideration and requirement for the districts? What does it do to the overall population deviation? And was this maintaining the set request that certain districts, or I'm sorry, certain municipal boundaries in particular were not being split? I don't want to say needlessly, but weren't being split more times than they had to be on that. And so I think coming to tonight, and certainly to last week's board presentation, we did that. We have districts that meet the population requirement, certainly have always maintained the VRA consideration. I would even argue that we went and made sure that there was influence districts where the population of minority residents aren't a functional majority, but have significant consolidation to have some influence within their said districts. And again, on the overall population, our deviation would not open us up to a challenge in that regard. Incumbency, you'll notice the dots throughout the map. We didn't try and put incumbents together at all, because again, that would be diluting a duly elected representative's ability. So to represent and not have one pitted against the other. So you'll see that has been maintained as well. And really coming to tonight, I think we have a map that is both fair, is competitive, and ultimately truly representative of the population within the county. And I think the chair, the staff, and board members, and the general public that came and let their thoughts and voices be heard, those influences are represented in this map, and I think that should be commended.
All right, thank you, Zach. So for the remainder of this, I have the presentation of the map that Madam Chairman provided to the county board. I'm going to walk through that quickly so that you can see the process a little bit, and then subsequently end with the map that was presented to the county board. And then we also have the two versions that are recent updates. So I'm going to try and stand over here. Hopefully I'm not in anybody's way. I think it's important to start with one of the early decisions was that they were going to stay with 24 single member districts. They had an opportunity to change the number of districts as well as the map shape. So that was another part of this. Again, all the people that worked on this, and thanking them. We had a lot of people. I'd like to especially thank some of the staff that's here even tonight. Blair Peters, we got Brenda Bushbacher, Karen Hames. Thank you for being here. Not that anybody else is any lesser though. So early on, we had State's Attorney's Office. State's Attorney Jamie Mosser came in and gave us a review of our legal obligations, requirements, state statutes, and even recommendations about this process. State's Attorney Mosser and the Chief of the Civil Division, Michelle Neerman, worked on this. And we also had a Special Assistant State's Attorney Phil Lutkans work on this as well. So we had a lot of legal counsel helping us through this process. Oops, we're going fast now. Is that me? Okay. So we started from the 2000 and 2010 maps. You'll see the population in 2000 was 404,000. We roll up to 2010, we're at 515,000. As you look at the 2000 versus 2010, we went from 26 districts to 24 districts. So we lost 2 districts. The board decided to change it to 24. This time we're sticking with the same 24 was the recommendation and what was approved. So May 4th, there was a special county board meeting. We were talking about the census being delayed from March until August of 2021. At that special county board meeting in May, there was consensus to move forward drawing maps with the American Community Survey 2015 to 2019 estimates. So we started with the idea that we could draw some districts that would be respectfully close to maybe the census and not have to totally revisit everything when the census data came out. Again, there was a county ordinance that established the 24 single member districts. And then we also had the approval of the 4 town halls that we held. When you go into the next step, we're looking at the ACS data and the population estimates. I think Zach mentioned that the population estimate was 532,000 from ACS data. That's an estimate. We know that now the census data came back at 516,000. So it was about 16,000 less. So we started with ACS data as our data set for drawing the maps. And we went through and reviewed a lot of history of the maps, including old maps from the previous time that we went through this. One of the things that we looked at was some of the advice we received from a Hispanic advocacy group, which was the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund. We looked at their population map and their demographics. We also focused in on maps that covered pretty much the Northeast, the Southeast, and then we also looked at maps, that were representative of the western side of the county. When you look at the 2010 information and data, this is where we were at in 2010, and these are the districts representing Hispanic populations. In those districts, the Hispanic population was the majority of the voters in that district. Now, they may not have been over 50%, but they were the most population in each district. So you can see that we had quite a few at the time in 2010. But if you look at the totals, there's 81, 74, relatively compact number of Hispanic population in 2 districts. Then you have some of the other districts that were, moderate, borderline 45, 46%. And that was something that was mentioned throughout the process, that trying not to have too many Hispanic population packed into one district as opposed to getting 63% across 8 districts. So this was the Mexican American Legal Defense maps. And this kind of gives you a heat map, an example of what they were looking at 10 years ago. Again, same type of map with the heat. You see the red is the Hispanic population, and this is Southeast and Aurora. So the next thing we did was we looked at the maps as we would with the ACS data, the 2015 to 2019 estimates. And looking at the current districts, you'll see that these are the percentage populations using the ACS data for estimates. And you'll still see District 1 and District 3 are pretty compact and high percentage Hispanic population. Then some of the others actually managed to climb. District 24 climbed all the way up to 70%. And then down here at the bottom, you're going to see largest populations. So what we noticed right away is that, District 9, 15, and 18 were considerably over the 21,000 population average that we had. So you have a couple of districts that are really oversized and some that have Hispanic population that is maybe too dense, and others that are a little bit less dense. So again, we looked at the Northeast part of the map from 2011 to see how that looked with the populations. And what you'll see on here, the yellow is simply the Hispanic majority ones, and the reds are the population over the average. And then down at the bottom, you'll see in the Northeast, the districts that we're talking about in this area. We went through this exercise and looked at all the demographics and population in Northeast, Southeast, West, every community, every district, pretty much trying to identify the Hispanic population and then the average population per district. So a lot of this information is online. We're going to have this presentation online as well. These are the districts that were way oversized. You can see this District 9 is 30,000 people, and this is still the ACS data. So we're not to the census yet. As you roll forward, we had the town hall meetings. I believe that Madam Chair mentioned the town hall meetings that we held. We got public comment, public input about not necessarily these maps that were already drawn. They were maps that were to be drawn. And we're just looking for what types of things do people want us to consider. We got some feedback. Some of that included information about keeping municipalities together, keeping certain jurisdictions together. People wanted to see their communities connected to their board members, which I think that was important. We had some other questions that came up about Western townships getting representation, some interesting feedback. So from the ACS data and feedback that we received, there were initially 3 maps drawn based on the ACS data. These were the 3 maps that were drawn. I would tell you that the maps that we have today, some of the characteristics are similar, some of them changed. A lot of it was driven by input that we received, but these were the first 3 ACS maps that we drew, and that would be on June 10th, 2021. So that was a few months back. This was the comparison. We run data sheets like this. It's not important that you understand the data necessarily at this point, but the data sheets would tell us the voting population, the Hispanic voting population, different demographics about the region. Along came Senate Bill 825. We had Zach and others in the legal community were following Senate Bill 825. On June 17th, Governor Pritzker signed the Senate bill. That Senate bill basically changed a few of the rules for us, or changed the landscape a little bit. We had a new deadline for Madam Chairman to present the map and the apportionment of the county. That became November 17th for the presentation, which we did last week. So we were a little bit early. Then we had a new deadline of December 31st to finish this process and have the new map approved by the county board. Madam Chair, you want to say?
And I just received word from Senator Castro. Senate Bill 825 was signed today by the governor.
Okay. So the last one on there is the date of the primary election, which I think is important to this process because of the petitions and the precincts, getting people to be able to file their petitions, because all 24 board races will be conducted starting in the June 28th primary. So the schedule changed a little bit. We moved forward with this schedule. This was provided by our legal counsel. This was for us to try and keep on track. You see down at the bottom, we ended up getting into late October, early November to adopt the reapportionment plan. We're still waiting for the county board to adopt the plan that was presented or with modification. So this public hearing process, any of the input, any of the information requests that we receive will go back to the team, and we'll be working with Madam Chairman on any subsequent changes at this point. But we're looking forward to having this approved. What's the date? November 30th. That date escapes me for some reason. So out of the ACS maps, we drew another map that was provided based on feedback from board members and input that we received. And this would represent the last ACS based map that we drew. We drew this map and then we went into a holding pattern because we were understanding more about the census data coming out, and we were trying to get some other work done. So along comes August 12th, we get the census data, we turn that around and we start working on maps based on the census data. Census data reveals to us that the population estimates that we were working from at 532,000 was a little bit high. We were 16,000 people higher than actual. So the census data shows us at 516,000 people in 2020. That's as of April 2020, and an increase of 1,253 in population, 0.24%. So the new district size went up a little bit, very slightly. It went up to 21,522 is the average size of one of the 24 districts. And again, Zach had mentioned that we're trying to keep the deviation down. I think we're somewhere around 2.5 for deviation. So it's pretty good. We immediately took the census data and started drawing maps in Aurora and Elgin. From Aurora and Elgin maps, we're trying to establish the VRA districts. And again, we were committed to doing 5 in Aurora, and we had 2 in Elgin and 1 in Carpentersville. So that's what the goal was. We thought we had the population based on the demographics to do that. And this again is the northeast side. So this is Elgin and Carpentersville. These were the first VRA based maps off the census. And again, we've made changes based on input. So these were just early drawings. Again, we come back. This is a full map that shows both the VRA districts and the first census draft of the map for the western townships and the western board districts. So in the midst of getting the census data and drawing the first VRA districts, we got a lot of feedback, a lot of information coming in. I think Madam Chair mentioned the 170 some changes. A lot of them came from VRA districts and some of the things that they wanted. This is giving you an example of the types of feedback we got. They were sketch art, lines, drawing around neighborhoods, drawing around precincts, asking us if we could make modifications to certain lines. We took all of that and generate basically a shape file or a line drawing. And then we start using the census data and the lines to pull population, pull demographics, pull the data in. But this is kind of the short process. You get the feedback, turn it into a map, start pulling the data into the map. Again, October 7th, you're going to see the full 24 board district map. This was a draft that was provided by our demographer as well. And you're going to see a sequence of maps. October 27th, we ran through some maps. October 26th is on there. Then we run into November 1st, November 2nd, and you'll see kind of the lead up to the final map. So the last couple weeks, we're doing a map every other day, every couple days. And this is the result of those 170 some requests and changes. Again, you're going to see Aurora came back with a map that the caucus of Aurora board members agreed to. This was the draft of that, November 3rd. So that wasn't too long ago, but they came to consensus and said this is what they would support. We took that and drew another 24 board district map on November 5th. So we're really close to the board meeting and the presentation of the map at this point. We had a couple minor changes. And the last map, this was the map that was presented by Madam Chair Kareem Pirog on November 9th. So this is the map that was presented. This is the map that's the subject of the public hearing. We also have maps that have been subsequently minor changes in the Elgin area. That's what was alluded to earlier. There's a couple little changes, District 12, 16, and 14. Most of that is population trade. It was about 200 people that we moved from one district to another. One of the rules that was early on established by Madam Chair and the task force was do not touch the VRA districts that the demographer did. So we tried to keep those intact to any extent we could, and we only did population swaps between agreed upon board member districts and non-VRA. So that was what one of our sets of rules was as we went through this. So this is the map that was presented. This is the population summary. So it shows you the different stats on the side. This deviation 4.99 is 2.5 above, 2.5 below. So from the top to the bottom, you can have separation of about 1,000 people out of 21,522. So the smallest district's around 21,000, largest district's around 22,000, just under. We try to stay under 22,000. I don't think we have any that are over, do we? No, we never hit that. So the other thing that we paid a lot of attention to, it's kind of obscured up here. This is the Hispanic voting age population in the far right column. And what we were trying to get 63% Hispanic population in the VRA districts. And we were trying to keep 59%, 58.5 to 59% for the Hispanic voting age population. So we were successful in doing that for the 5 districts in Aurora, 2 districts in Elgin, and 1 in Carpentersville. So what does that mean? These are the Hispanic voting rights districts. You have district 1, 3, 6, 7, and 8 in Aurora, district 17 and 20 in Elgin, and district 24 in Carpentersville. Those are the Hispanic voting rights districts for Kane County that are being proposed. So that we have the public hearings that are taking place right now. We have the hearing tonight, and then there's going to be another hearing on Wednesday, November 17th at 6 o'clock. That hearing will be live on Zoom. There's a Zoom invite on countyofkane.org, so people can participate online from home, or they can watch on YouTube, or you're more than welcome to come and visit in person. So this is, again, the map that was presented by Madam Chair. The map in the last few days has experienced a couple of minor updates in Elgin area. I provided those. There was an update on the 12th. I challenge you to see the difference, but it's a small difference. There's about 200 people that were moved between District 12, 16, and 14. And that was something that was mutually agreed upon. And we made those changes basically between this morning and Friday. Friday, there was a change, and then today. And then this is the latest version that Madam Chair speaks of, which is from this morning. So with that, I think that concludes the presentation. We're going to have the opportunity for you to make public comment. We have the podium. I know we had at least one person signed up to speak. I don't know that it's a requirement, but we do need you to state your name and I think the city. So if there's anybody that's interested in making a public comment, I'd be happy to invite you up, invite you forward. Anybody? Mark? I think.
Good evening. My name is Mark Avalar. I live in Algonquin, Illinois, 27-year resident of Kane County. I do want to applaud the board, the staff, Mr. Fonstock, and the consultants and staff members who put this together. This is definitely a Herculean task when census data was so late and impact to particularly the city of Aurora, and that's the Kane County portion of Aurora, was more dramatic than it was with the ACS data. So my compliments to all for making this work in a fair possible way. As I said when I was at the task force meeting a week ago, this map is solid. It's very good. With maybe a few more little tweaks here and there, it could be even better. And I had Mr. Fonstock, I think I sent you an email because one area where the public cannot give full engagement to give meaningful feedback to the county is that we do not have the underlying numbers of the split precincts within the county. The census data is available at the precinct level. If you live in a county like I worked with McHenry earlier this year, they don't split precincts. So what the census data published, you can easily make suggested changes, and an amendment was adopted back in September. But I've sent a list of precincts to Mr. Fonstock, and maybe in time for the Wednesday public hearing, if we can get the return of those numbers, because I'm concerned about, because I live up in Dundee Township in the Northeast, and I'm seeing some opportunities to bring in additional communities of interest, particularly in the unincorporated Southern Township, which they've been drawn into a district that's slightly higher in population, I think with a couple of tweaks. For instance, bringing back precinct 28 portion out of 19 and into 21. I just don't know what the population impact for that is, and I want to give full feedback for that. Also, there might be an opportunity for a neighborhood in precinct 23 north of the tollway, which is an unincorporated neighborhood known as Frontenac. And in recent months, there have been opportunities with working with Dundee Township, and it might be representation to help maybe one of the Dundee Township centric county board members have responsibility over the Frontenac subdivision in southern Dundee Township. And again, I do have the precinct totals, but I can't drill down to see if we can make it a viable amendment, which I'd like to be able to do. And maybe in the next couple of days, we can have that feedback and make that a little bit better. Also, something that Chair Pirog has said many times is that we want to build a map also for the future. And I'm grateful for the staff for entertaining Member Caius's input to include a recent annexation from my hometown, the village of Algonquin, and to move that into District 23, because that is going to be through a 17-year TIF with chronic flooding. There's definitely going to be cooperation between county and village staff, and certainly the elected officials accountable to the residents. And I'm grateful for that proposal being adopted. Looking at the Algonquin future land use plan, we have an opportunity on the area of Rutland Township north of Huntley Road. And I counted up, there's only 7 households. And if we can make District 23 potentially completely congruent in Kane County to the village of Algonquin future land use plan, then that would be planning for the future, maybe not the next 10 years, maybe the next 20 years. But we want to make this as far reaching without negatively impacting the population count. So that's another suggestion. That's why I asked for certain precincts, Mr. Fonstock. But other than that, it's overall a solid map. As I said, it's very good, but with a few tweaks here and there between now and November 30th, I think it'd be better. And I'm going to suggest that cooperatively, and I'm sure there's other residents, if they've looked at the census data at the precinct level, maybe they might offer similar feedback. So just that might be something to make available, the split precinct boundaries and how might we understand. Because as I talked with a couple of board members back in September, when I see the board district, proposed district population counts, trying to make them add up, we can't do as a citizen because of split precincts. So I share that feedback and we'll see what happens between now and Wednesday and we'll go from there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. Is there anybody else that would like to provide any public feedback at this time? And again, Mark, thank you. I will be getting back to you. We did, one of the things that we did do today is on the County of Kane website, there is an interactive GIS map that you might be able to get some of the data you're looking for. If you go into the interactive map, you have to pick the 2020 map off of the drop-down menu, but it has a lot of detail. You can get down to the street. You can actually see the outlines of the structures on the roads and things. And I believe it has precinct, and I think it might have census block. So, and we didn't do a lot of our, we tried to follow township lines. We tried to follow, yeah, Blair's got it up there. It's the bottom one, Blair, the interactive map. Can you show us? Excellent. So go to the 2020 up on the left, click on 2020. That's fine. Yes.
Because of the reapportionment map is being voted upon so late, and the elected officials will have to start gathering signatures by mid-January. I think they start January 15th, the 13th, that there was concern about redrawing precincts. So all precincts are going to remain exactly the same for this map going forward in the future, perhaps in another year, 2 years, where there's time to be able to review the precincts. They may change at that point, but right now, everything, all precincts remain exactly where they were. So there's no confusion with that. So there will be split precincts, unfortunately, because the lines drew and some of the lines do go between a precinct because of population changes. We had one precinct, what was it, Rutland 9? 2 that had several, what, 3,000 or 4,000 people in it.
7,500, I think.
7,500.
And then there's the population's even greater than that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was
But
new growth.
so this is the interactive map. These are, you can, like I said, you can drill in down to the street level. And I just turned on the block data. So that's actually census block data and the block numbers, and then the populations below that. And then there's also precinct numbers. So you kind of turn things on and off, and you can see a lot more detail. But we'll also look at the list of precincts and what was suggested and put those into our format. But I think that's all the presentation. So if there's other public comment, I'm not here to speak all night. So if anybody else have any other public comment, or hearing none, we'll do a final call. And I think, Madam Chair, do you want to say a few words in closing, or we can give them a minute?
Was it speak and or forever hold your peace? So thank you all for being part of this process. For those of you, again, who are online, who may choose to send us an email regarding changes that you are suggesting, please feel free to do so. We'd like to get them by Wednesday because we want to make sure that we have plenty of time with the upcoming Thanksgiving holidays that we have this map done. This map is your map. It is responsive to you. Your county board members are your representatives for local county government. So we want to make sure that you have a chance to be able to vote for the person that you feel that you would like to support. This map is really, as best as we possibly could make it, a fair map. There was no conversation at any point on the board level when we were in the board meetings, nor at the task force, and I want to assure all of our voters, whether or not it was a Republican district or Democratic district. That was never, ever in our conversation. There's sure, obviously, there were side conversations that happened offline between that. That's very normal. That's very natural. But for the county, that was never, ever talked about. What we tried to do is to make sure that there was one voter, what is it? One vote, and one, what can you say? One man, one vote. I'm sorry. One person, one vote. My cold is giving me a foggy head. Oh. So the next step after this gets done, and the board does approve it, hopefully on November 30th, knock on wood, it is so far their map now. I presented the map on November 8th. Right now, this is the board's map, and the board would like to, on behalf of the board, thank you so much for participating in all of this. We also welcome you to help out your local board candidate, whatever side of the coin you may so choose to support. Get to know about county politics, come to one of our meetings, stay engaged, be aware. Issues I'm going to be working on in the future, besides passing our budget. We're going to be taking a look at the growth on the Illinois 47 corridor on Randall Road as well, because of future growth that's happening there. So those meetings will be taking place next year throughout the county, particularly on 47, and again on northern part of Randall Road because of the great growth. We're also taking a look at water to make sure that we have safe, secure water that's going to last not just our generation, but for generations, many generations yet to come. So that'll be a study that we'll be looking at for the next 3 or 4 years to be able to make sure that we have proper land use and land planning to satisfy the growing needs of Kane County in that area. So this is what the county is doing, and we do many more things, but on behalf of the board and of course myself and the staff, thank you so much for being an engaged citizen and for joining us tonight. Have a safe one, everybody. Formally closed.
The next meeting is Wednesday night. It'll be at the Kane County Government Center at 6 p.m. So if you'd like to join us either in person or online, you can visit the county website, countyofkane.org. There's information about the public notice, and the invitation is out there for the Zoom instructions if you want to join online and watch. So thank you for being here. Have a good evening.